Velkommen til Jesusnett og programmet Trygg Tro. Her samtaler vi om bibelske temaer som vi ønsker skal gi deg styrke og håp i livet og bygge troen på Jesus. Bibelen er Guds ord, og ordet vil gi deg trygg tro. Dagens gjest heter B Major. Han har bakgrunn som teolog og bibelskolelærer fra England, og han har jobbet som misjonær i Europa. Opprinnelig er Major fra Florida i USA, og for tiden arbeider han i Jesusnett. Temaet i dagens program er Gud er en misjonerende Gud.
Ed Major, we have a topic today about missions.
Yes.
We have been giving a task as a church to bring the gospel to the ends of the world.
Yes.
This is missions.
This is missions, yeah.
And we have something called the Great Commission.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if we were in a Bible college classroom or maybe a Sunday morning sermon, I would say to the church or to the students, I would say, turn to the Great Commission and not say anything else. And
Yes.
then if they knew where to go, some of them would be like, I don't even know what to do. But if they knew where to go, they'd probably go to Matthew 28, Mark 16, of
yes,
course, right?
yeah.
Where we have very familiar scriptures about the Great Commission.
Jesus is sending them out, and he's going to the heavens and asking them to go to the end of the world.
That's
Matthew
right.
28, yes.
But this is what I do. I'm a bit cheeky about it.
Oh.
I actually start reading from Genesis 12, verse 1 through 3.
You find the Great Commission in Genesis 12.
Exactly. I asked him this question. I said, do you really think that God's concern for the salvation of the world begins in Matthew 28? Everyone before Jesus' time, well, don't worry about them, right? God's always been a missionary God. He's always had a missions heart, right? And so I call Matthew 28 the Great Recommission, because it's only re-emphasizing and restating what God's heart already was back in the Old Testament. And so
God has a heart for people of the whole world before
exactly.
Jesus came. Yeah.
Yeah, and the nation of Israel was supposed to be a missionary nation. It was
Really?
their
Yeah.
role as a people group to win Gentiles to God.
How do you find this in Genesis 12?
Well, let me read. In verse 1, Genesis 12, verse 1. The Lord said to Abraham, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I'll bless you. I'll make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Now, God told Abraham, interesting, to leave his hometown and to go somewhere else. And he says, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to provide for all your needs. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to take care of you. And then you will become a blessing to others. Right? So here God says to Abraham, I'm going to bless you, not so that you can just soak in the hot tub of blessing, but so that you could actually be a blessing to other people. The resources I bless you with, Abraham, I want you to use to bless others. And then Paul, this is where we get the Great Commission in this verse. Paul in Galatians chapter 3, verse 8, he quotes Genesis 12, verse 3 in the context of saying that what God intended for this verse was the justification of the Gentiles by faith. Missions, right? That the world would get saved through faith. That was the blessing that God was talking about when he said that to Abraham in Genesis 12, verse 3.
Not only the people of Israel,
Exactly.
but all nations.
All nations. And that begins from the very beginning. We have to remember that the Bible begins global. Many times when people think of the Old Testament, they think of God and his relationship with Israel. It's all about Israel. But you have to remember, Genesis 1 through 11 is global. God dealing with all of humanity over the whole world. The Bible begins global. And then Genesis 12, he starts to focus on a particular person and a particular people group, the Jews. But then he gives them a mission to be a missionary nation. So, for example, let me give you an example. And many people don't look at the Old Testament this way. They're thinking missions in the Old Testament. That's a bit strange. I always think of the Great Commission in Matthew 28, Mark 16, verse 15, right? And these are all great verses, but I think, for example, if we go to the book of Exodus, chapter 9, 2 Moses, chapter 9.
That's where the people of Israel are in Egypt.
Exactly. Yes, this is the time when Israel are enslaved in Egypt, and now God is going to deliver them. And so, I like to ask people, what is the main point of the Exodus story?
Is that the people of Israel are released from slavery.
That's what 99% of the people are going to say.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's all about Israel, God delivering Israel. And of course, the Exodus story is about that. But if you actually read chapters 1 through 12, and I'm going to give one example here of many, but we'll see that God has a greater plan in the Exodus than just delivering the nation of Israel.
You can find mission statements in
Yes.
Exodus 9.
Yes. I like to ask the question, well, if God just wanted to deliver Israel, why did he need 10 plagues? Right? He could have just used one. He could have just sent a disease, all the Egyptians are dead, and Israel's like, well, okay, let's go. They can just leave, right?
Oh, he wanted to teach the Egyptians a real lesson then.
I guess so. But, he didn't need 10. In fact, this is what we read in chapter 9, verse 13. Then the Lord said to Moses, get up early in the morning, confront Pharaoh, and say to him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. Or this time I will send the full force of my plagues against you and against your officials and your people. Listen, this is the key thing. So that you may know that there is no one like me in all the earth. Right?
He's doing missions towards the Egyptians.
God is looking to glorify himself, right? Not just in Egypt, not just with Israel, and all the earth. Listen, look at verse 15. This gets really fascinating. For by now, I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with a plague that would have wiped you off the earth. This goes back to the why 10 plagues. God could have just wiped them out, right? But why did he not? Verse 16, but I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. See, that's interesting, right?
It wasn't only for the Egyptians.
No. And in fact, if you read through Exodus chapter, I think it's like chapter 5 through 12, I believe it's 13 times God says, the reason I'm doing this, the reason I'm sending the plagues, is that my name may be glorified in all the earth, right? So, and then you also have to think about why Egypt? What was Egypt in that time? Egypt was a superpower. It was a global power. Everybody would have gone to Egypt, right? To study, to be educated, to work, to make money. And of course, can go back a little bit farther and say, well, think how wealthy Egypt was. It might have been because God in the first place, right? Remember all the famines in Genesis? And that Joseph was sent, and God gave him a plan, and Joseph collected all the food so that all the nations were coming to Egypt. They would have become very wealthy. And people would have been there and would have stayed there and doing business, getting educated. It would have been a melting pot of people from all over the world. Now think about it. And that's where God glorifies his name, right? Right where he would have the most impact in the whole world. So he does the 10 plagues. Israel's delivered, right? And then all these people, well, it's time to leave Egypt because Egypt's kind of destroyed now. And so where do they go? They go back to their homes around the world, and they tell people, wow, you should have seen what the God of Israel did, right? And his name would have been glorified over the whole world. And the question is, did it work? Did people understand, right?
Yeah.
In Exodus chapter 12, verse 38, it says this, many other people went up with them, also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herd. It wasn't just the Jews that left. We tend to think it was only Israel that escaped that day. Many other people recognized the God of Israel and became followers of him as well.
So God's plan worked.
It worked.
And,
shocking, I know.
Yeah. And, well, the deliverance of Israel was something that was remembered in Israel up to our time.
Exactly.
But has God's plan for the world been sort of remembered and up to our time, his heart for the people?
Well, God always reminds Israel of that. I delivered you from Egypt. Remember, you were slaves and I delivered you. What he's saying to them is, I've shown you mercy. And you go to Exodus 19. We can't go there now. We probably don't have time. But Exodus 19, 3-6, he says, remember how I delivered you from the Egyptians. I delivered you from slavery. I've shown you great mercy. Now I want you to be a kingdom of priests. He gave them a mission statement. Forget about Levi. Levi was going to be the priesthood, right? This is before that. He called the whole nation to be a kingdom of priests, to be representatives of God in the earth. That's what priests do. They represent God, right? And but that was based on his great mercy for them. And so in reaction to his great mercy, okay, God will serve you as priests, right? And think about it. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. He quotes Exodus chapter 19, verse 6, and he calls the church a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, a royal priesthood. And he says, then our role, verse 10, is to proclaim his goodness in all the world. He uses that same language for the church, right? And again, Romans chapter 12, verse 1. Paul says, brothers, I cry out to you, by the mercies of God, offer your life as a living sacrifice. God has shown you so much mercy. So then in reaction to that, offer your lives to serve him with all your heart.
I can see you can talk about this for hours, but we have seen now that God throughout the Old Testament have used Israel as a vessel for his mission plans.
That's right.
And the big question is still doing this? Is this something we can be involved in? So we'll talk about this after a short break. We have seen that God, from the beginning, has a heart for the whole world, all nations, all people. And he has given the church a great commission. You have shown us that the great commission is all, we can find it in Genesis.
Yeah.
We used to find it in Matthew 28 when Jesus gives it.
Yeah.
But you call it the
Recommission.
Recommission.
That's right.
It's just stating something that's already been stated from the beginning of.
That's right, Helga. Perfect. Yeah.
And that means that his heart is still there.
Yes.
For the whole people, the whole world.
Yeah.
And if we want to live after God's heart, we want to be a part of this mission.
Yeah. That's right.
How can we be a part of his
Great
commission?
That's a great question, because if you just watch the first 11 minutes of this show, you're thinking, okay, is Ed saying that everybody in the church, every Christian has to be a missionary? Do I have to quit my job and travel somewhere and be a missionary? I would say yes and no. I would say that as the church, we should be open to that.
Yeah.
But I don't actually believe everybody's called to go to another country. Mm-hmm. But I do believe everyone's called to be involved, right? For example, in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, right? Jesus says to the early church, he says, I want to give you power to be my witnesses, right? So he says, I want to empower you to be my witnesses. And then he gives the location, he gives the dimension of that calling. He says, I want to give you power to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth, right?
From the place they lived.
Exactly.
To the ends of the world.
Yeah, and I think it's very important. He says, I want you to be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and the ends of the earth. Notice he didn't say or.
We can't be in every place all the time at the same time.
No, and that's why we need the power of God, isn't it? It's such a high and incredible calling. We need God's power. But what I believe that verse is saying is my vision for ministry, my vision for outreach should begin in my hometown. My Jerusalem now is Kongsberg, Norway. And so my vision for ministry begins there. But Jesus is saying, don't let your vision for ministry stop there. Right?
It could be the ends of the world.
It should be in your hometown, in your country, and then even to the ends of the earth. We should be involved. So the question is how am I involved? Right? Well, what does that mean? yes, I think people, all Christians, because we've all experienced the mercy of God, should be willing to serve God in any capacity. And so, I should be willing, you should be willing, we all should be willing to be literal missionaries going to another country. But I believe not everyone has that calling. But I believe that we're all called to be involved. We're all called to support the Great Commission. And I think we see an incredible example of this in the church in Philippi that Paul writes the letter of Philippians to.
What kind of church is that? Do we know anything about that?
Oh, we know a lot about it. I believe, as the book testifies, that they are a missions-minded church. They understand the Great Commission. They understand how they're supposed to be involved. And it's interesting, Paul says things to this church that he doesn't say to any of the other churches.
Okay.
He had a very special relationship with them. In fact, in chapter 4, verse 1.
We are now in Philippians.
Philippians
Okay.
chapter 4, verse 1. He says, "Therefore, my brothers and sisters, you whom I love and long for, my joy and crown." He refers to them as my joy and crown. Paul says that you, in his mind, was elevated to a higher position. You're my crown. It's like Paul's saying, everything I wanted the church to be, you're the one church that has been raised to that point. You're my crown. You're the one example I refer to in regards to all the churches of a church that's really got a heart for God. And so you got, wow, what is the church in Philippi done that has caused Paul to say such great words? And if we go back to chapter 1, verse 5, he says, I thank my God, this is verse 3, sorry, I thank my God every time I remember you in all my prayers for all of you. I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. This church was committed to being a partner with Paul in the gospel, spreading the gospel, the Great Commission, from the very first day the church started there until the present time.
Now, Paul was traveling all over the place.
Exactly.
Not necessarily the church members.
No,
or the church. Yeah.
Paul was doing a lot of the missions work. He was the one doing it.
But they were partnering with
They
him.
were supporting him in various ways. And this is where I think there's at least three things. There's many things we could do, but three things that we see here clearly with the church in Philippi that they were doing to support Paul in his endeavor to do the Great Commission. And the first thing we see is that they were practically involved. They practically supported him. Notice he says, you were partnering with me from the first day until now. Well, what happened in the first day? Right? Remember, Paul went out to pray. There was a small group of people that went by the river to worship God, and Paul led those people to Christ, and one of them was a woman named Lydia. And Lydia, what did she do? She begged Paul, please come back to my house. Let me take care of you. Stayed at his house, took care of him, gave him a place to live, fed him, and all that kind of stuff before he continued on his journey. She practically supported him from the first day. And Paul says also till now, right? They were regularly sending people to Paul to support him. In fact, we see that in chapter 2, verse 25. But I think it necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. We see this church was sending people.
Not just money, but even
people to bring stuff to support Paul and to encourage him. And when he was in Philippi, they were practically helping him as well, right? So I think as a church, when we have contact with missionaries, and I think most people know a missionary, that we should be willing to be practically involved. When they come back, sometimes they need a car, they need to travel around and meet people, they need maybe someone to babysit their children, because the parents are having to go around and visit different churches and visit different people, and the kids get dragged all over the place, So there's a lot of practical things we can be involved in supporting the Great Commission and supporting missionaries. But also, this was a praying church. They were praying for Paul. This is another way we can be involved, is commit to praying for missions and missionaries. We see that in chapter 1, verse 19. Paul says, for I know that through your prayers and God's provision of the Spirit, of Jesus Christ, what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance.
Because they are praying.
They're praying.
Yeah.
They have committed to be praying for Paul's ministry. And so I challenge people. I said, this is the most powerful way you can be involved in the Great Commission. Actually, for whatever missionaries you know, whatever mission agency or missions work that you're aware of and that you get involved with, commit to praying for them regularly, right? Be involved prayerfully.
And that's actually not too difficult.
No, it's not at all. It's just a choice to say, okay, every Monday morning I'm going to pray for them. Or every day, when I have my devotional time or my prayer time, I'm going to pray, right? It's not a difficult thing.
But the effect of the prayer is huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Paul's ministry, right? And how effective he was because people were praying for him, right? And the other thing that we see that the Philippians were doing is they were actually supporting him financially.
Giving him money.
Giving him money, giving him
Yeah.
resources and blessing him with financial aid, right? They actually, okay, we're committed to this and we're actually going to make a sacrifice and actually send Paul money to help him. And we see that in chapter 4, right? In chapter 4, in many places, we don't probably have time to read chapter 4, verse 10 through 19, but you can do that. People can read that, but you see that regularly over and over again, they were meeting Paul's financial needs. Verse 14, for example, yet it was good of you to share in my troubles, right? The end of verse 15, not one church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving except you only. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent me aid more than once when I was in need. Verse 18, I have received full payment and have more than enough. I'm amply supplied now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent. And then Paul, interesting enough, promises him that God will meet all your needs. Because they were a very giving church. They were financially involved, right?
So being involved in missions today, even,
Yeah.
we can find inspiration from the Philippians
Yeah.
by giving,
Yeah.
financially supporting missions,
Right.
praying, even going there, visit short trips and also supporting missionaries.
Just practically helping them any way they can.
Yeah.
Now, it's very important that we understand if you're going to go to visit a missionary, go to serve. Don't go for them to be your tour guide.
No.
That's
true.
Sometimes I'm a bit nervous when say, "Oh, we can't wait to come and visit you," and they're wanting to see a country and they want me to be their tour guide. No, just go and bless them and serve them. Clean their house, babysit their kids, let the mom and dad go on a date night, right? Do something to practically bless them.
And also be open to become a missionary yourself, and have this as a thing in your church, as a goal to be a church to send missionaries also abroad. This is a challenge to us. This is a heart God has had from the beginning to also bless all people and bless all nations, to have all nations and all men all over the world turn to Him. This is a challenge for all of us and all of you. Thanks for watching. We will send it over to Eva Sonova.
Og nå går vi mot slutten av dagens sending. Men som vanlig så tar vi med oss et spørsmål fra forumet på internett. Om du har spørsmål til dagens sending eller andre spørsmål om kristen tro, så kan du benytte vårt forum på jesusnett.com. Alle får svar fra svarpanelet, og noen av spørsmålene og svarene kan du også lese der. Dagens spørsmål som vi skal ta med oss her, er det feil av meg å be Gud om å få slippe å bli sendt ut som misjonær til et annet land?
Det er... Ja, mange vil jo se på det som en stor mulighet, å få lov til å bli sendt av Gud til et annet land. Og det vi må si her kanskje er at du bør være åpen for det Gud har i vente for deg. Og om det så å bli sendt ut i et annet land, så det Gud vil for deg, så har du mye spennende i vente. Så det å stenge for alle muligheter, eller bare fordi det skummelt for eksempel, det ikke den beste løsningen. Men hvis Gud kaller deg til noe, enten det å reise til et annet land eller til en tjeneste her i Norge, så vil han utruste deg. Og det må vi være klar over. Han vil utruste deg til det. Og så vil han faktisk gi deg sånn lyst og litt spenning rundt det også. Så du skal ikke være redd for å få kall fra Gud. Enten det å reise til den andre siden av kloden, eller gå inn i tjeneste her, uansett hva slags tjeneste det Ja. Han utruster når han kaller. Og så gir han faktisk en lyst og spenning til det.
Så hvis denne personen ikke har lyst, men har blitt kalt, så kan Gud gi lysten?
Etter hvert, ja, han vil gi det. Og det vil ikke si at det ikke vil bli vanskelig. Uansett hva slags tjeneste du står i, så vil du møte utfordringer. Og det vil du møte hvis det en tjeneste i Norge også. Og det kjenner vi igjen. Hvis vi velger en utdanning og en jobb som vi drømmer om, så vil den jobben også oppleves kjedelig og vanskelig noen ganger. Så det gjelder alle typer tjenester. Men det en styrke å vite at Gud har kalt deg til noe og sender deg til noe, og han utruster alle som han sender. Så ikke bry deg med å be om å slippe ting, men søk heller positivt etter Guds kall og hva han vil bruke deg til, for det vil han benytte deg til å bre Guds rike utover hele verden.
Ja. Da programmet over for i dag. Men vi tilbake neste uke med en ny episode av Trygg Tro. Vi ses.